My initial idea came from I wanted to set a like a whodunit in a quiet English village. My husband is from a village that I based Castle Knoll on. It's called Corfe Castle. It's in Dorset, so it is a real place. But I renamed everything so that the locals wouldn't come for my neck and be like, "That's not exactly that. That bakery's not over there." Um, but Annie Adams is our protagonist in the modern day, and she is 25 years old, and she lives in a bohemian kind of crumbling Chelsea townhouse with her artist mom. And they are there because they are allowed to live in a house owned by their great Aunt Frances, who Annie has never met because she's like the family kind of like laughing stock because they all know that Aunt Frances is so superstitious because one time when she was a teenager, she went to a country fair and was told by a fortune teller that one day she would be murdered. And she took this so seriously that she lived the rest of her life gathering dirt on everyone who crossed her path so that she could try to prevent that from happening by trying to see, what everyone's secrets were. And eventually she is murdered. So Annie gets a letter summoning her to this estate. And essentially, it transpires that she has to. Anne Frances was so tired of being the family laughingstock that she set up her will to stipulate that whoever solves her murder inherits her big house and her massive fortune. So Annie is sort of pitched like head to head against some conniving relatives and quirky people in the village to see who can figure this out. And we get to know Aunt Frances through her parallel diary entries that take place in the 60s when she was a teenager. And um, the 1965 timeline wasn't an original element in the book when I first drafted it. It was just that Annie was gonna be kind of getting to know Aunt Frances just through her files of like all of the other people's secrets. And I just had this idea that like, wouldn't it be cool if like we had the amateur detective, but her crime solving partner was actually already dead. And that was kind of the genesis of that. And then I wrote the entire book kind of that way, but it was really missing its heart, so to speak. And it was through a lot of feedback and drafting and some really helpful advice from my agent, where she was just like, "You've got to find a way to kind of give this some depth. That we need some depth in it." And it occurred to me that, actually the easiest way for me to do that would be to get Frances's voice on the page because she's dead. And when we have a murder victim, I mean, one of my biggest kind of pet peeves in reading murder mysteries is when the murder victim, we don't get to know enough about them to make their death interesting. And I wanted us to care that Frances was dead at the beginning of the book in our modern day timeline. And I thought the best way to do that would be to get us to just fall in love with her through her point of view and her diaries as a 17-year-old and try and figure out why she became so transfixed with this fortune, why she was so convinced that it was going to come true. One of the things that I really love about these quaint, cozy whodunits where you've got, a set cast of characters, but it's a whole village of people, is that it's almost transportive. It's like it can feel sort of escapist. It's almost like literary tourism, in a way. And number one, I've made so many visits to these different little villages in the UK because my husband being from the rural, beautiful part of Dorset, there are so many idyllic spots like this that it kind of imprinted itself on me. And I thought, well, I would love to write this in a way where someone who never seen this can feel like they're there too. So a lot of that is just my enthusiasm for and it's just like the American transplant to the UK. There are certain things that I never get tired of seeing, and I'm really glad that I haven't gotten like overused to them. And people, in like the English countryside laugh at me taking pictures of like dry stone walls where they make these long walls along the like coastal sweeping grass sides of things where there's no cement used. They're just stones like stacked in these really specific ways. And people will just be like "What?" But I'm like, do you not see how interesting and beautiful this is? And so yeah, it was my way of just letting my own enthusiasm for like even the little details to kind of color the words on the page and bring hopefully some sense of place to a yeah, to a otherwise kind of normal whodunit story. Book 2, How to Steal Your Own Fate, kicks off with Annie having a chance encounter with the fortune teller. Her name is Peony Lane, and she is the original fortune teller who told Francis's fortune in book 1. And Annie has a sort of cryptic encounter with her, and not long after, Peony Lane is found dead inside the solarium of the house that Annie lives in now. I don't want to give too many spoilers for book 1, but we know where book 1 is going, kind of, you know. But Annie then has to like piece together who would want to kill this fortune teller, but she also looks a little bit guilty herself, and there's a whole host of past cold crimes that kind of come to light, and we get to see Francis's side of things from her diaries. So the format continues where we have Frances in the 1960s experiencing a whole new investigation on her side, and the two cases, it's we get to see them interlock over time. I actually really loved the some of the character stuff that I did, and also just looking at the time period where I have Frances has this sort of creative side where she really likes to recreate fashion out of like, recycle just this other clothes. Like she just makes them into things that she sees in magazines, and she's pretty skilled at that, and she has a kind of quirky affinity for, like getting out in the world. Well, she wants to get outside of Castle Knoll. I should probably phrase that a little bit better. Francis's kind of desperation to be her own person and not kind of live under the shadow of her fortune drives her to just make some choices to be a bit more free and easy and out in the world. And there were some fun scenes where I thought, I want her to go to a concert. I want her to go to an open air market. I want her to experience like, some things where, she makes some choices that don't really seem like her, but she just wants to see how they feel. So I had a lot of fun kind of being like, okay, well, what if she found herself in Southampton? Who was playing in Southampton in 1967? And I was looking up different things, different concert venues, and I was like, oh, nice. So I just had this great just fun looking at, what would have been on the radio? What kind of outfits would she have been trying to sew out of things? Because what was like the way people were dressing? So that was just some fun soaking in the time period. And that's something that I think I've enjoyed with all of the books. We've announced books 3 and 4, and I've just, handed in my edits for the third book. Yeah, and the title is How to Cheat Your Own Death